Organizational Sherlocks, the podcast where business meets psychology and your organizational puzzles meet their match. Join us for captivating stories and practical solutions to unravel your toughest challenges. I'm Morgan Ashworth, one of your guides to a prescription for business success. Let's dive in. Hi, listeners. We are very excited to introduce to you today Maurice. Maurice, would you go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. So happy to be here with you. So you want me to actually do my like an intro of who the heck I am and why we're talking?
Yeah, please do so. I'm sure our listeners would love to get to know you.
Okay, fantastic. So who I am is I'm in the business of transformation, and the reason we're talking is I was absolutely resonate with when you add psychology and business success. To me, businesses are made from people, and we are a beautiful, complex beings, and you cannot have business success without getting into the weeds of psychology. And that's right, psychology, subconscious, human behavior. That's my pool to play in. That's what I really, really love. And also, I absolutely love business. Like, the business container gives us an opportunity to create in the world, to express our value. So when you combine both of those things together, those are actually my two passions. So it makes total sense that we get to have this conversation today.
Yeah, definitely. I feel you're going to have some great insights for our listeners. And so it was a perfect match to bring you on for a conversation today.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Can you start by telling me a little bit about your life fulfillment project?
Yeah, so the Life Fulfillment Project is something that I committed to for this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a sneaking suspicion that it might be kind of a long-term thing, but simply I was looking for like a label to take all the things that I was working on and thinking about. And really, I'm what I measure with one of my tools, so we'll end up probably talking about it, is we measure fulfillment. That's what the x-axis is called.
Mm-hmm.
And we measure a person's fulfillment and how to increase it in the world. So I've got that piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really, really love writing. And I, as a solo entrepreneur, I've kind of come in and out of my discipline towards that.
Mm-hmm.
And this year I'm like, no, I'm going to write every month about one of the categories that we're measuring.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a way to kind of wrap a really nice container around, hey, this is the fulfillment blog. And then one of the other things I absolutely love to do is what you're doing right now, is I love to facilitate like meaningful conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly, I've been blessed to have a depth and breadth of like a lot of different avenues on how we heal, how we transform.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to bring that depth into the world through conscious conversation. So I've started what will end up being a full-on podcast, but I've started now. It's a series of conversations with a really unique blend. So the Fulfillment Project also has a interview series. And there I bring on coaches with unique modalities.
Mm-hmm.
And we do like about a half an hour-ish segment of who they are and what's unique about them. And then I've got this really cool part where I bring on actual live clients.
Wow, that's awesome.
And we combine my body of work, which basically allows you to know a person deeply, really, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So I prep the coach or the therapist. I prep them with who that person is and kind of what's going on. And then they step into it, and the listeners get to hear, rather than theorize about, this or that. They get to hear the modality in action in a live session. And to me, when I combine all those things, it's a really nice wrap of how do we raise our fulfillment in the world? How do we be aware of it?
Mm-hmm.
How do we focus on where we can have the most gains and who's out there to help us? Because we shouldn't do it alone. So that's what the Fulfillment Project's all about.
Yeah. What originally inspired you to create the Fulfillment Project?
honoring my creative being, which sounds wishy-washy, so I'm going to make that more concrete. It's like we are, as humans, I think we're all born creators.
Mhm.
And as creators, we got to find outlets for that expression.
Mhm.
And for me, when I look at how do I really, really honor my outlets of creative expression, and where can I best do that in a way that's going to give value,
Mhm.
hey, I want to do these three things.
Mhm.
And I know if I'm doing those three things, I'm adding value, and it's a really good containers for my expression. So for me, it was honoring that creative spirit in a way that had enough structure that would give consistency.
Yeah.
So that was my inspiration.
Yeah, I think it's great. It makes me think back to, if anyone took psychology in high school, college, you likely learned the pyramid of human needs. And through those pyramid of human needs, obviously you have your true necessities, food, shelter, yada, yada, things like that for survival. But as you go up, then you get more into the social needs and the mental needs. And towards the top of the pyramid, you see self-fulfillment.
Yep.
And then right on top of that, it's actually self-transcendence.
Yep.
And so that's obviously one extra piece. Now, a lot of people do get there, but self-fulfillment is seen as the peak for most individuals. And when you think about it, self-fulfillment can be across your life. So you could have self-fulfillment in a social sense with your friends. You could have self-fulfillment in a career-based sense, which is, I will say, most people do defer to that. They think of self-fulfillment on what can I do in my career? What are my goals in my career? More so than they do in their personal lives oftentimes. In their personal lives, they usually are thinking more of the necessities of money and food and shelters or travels, things like that, versus the life fulfillment of in your career. So would you say that there is in your life fulfillment project, would you say there is both that social and career-based aspect?
Absolutely. Actually, it's so the life inventory assessment, my body of work measures 13 categories.
Mhm.
So just like you said, it really brings awareness to all the roles in our lives that we get to play.
Mhm.
And often we're only focused on maybe one or two of those roles,
Mhm.
where we might have pockets of deep dissatisfaction or unresolved pain or
Mhm.
unresolved or unexpressed expression. And if we ignore those for too long, it's not healthy.
Yeah.
So in each of the month, I'm only focused on one of those, and I bring on an expert that has an expertise in that. So January was physical health.
Mhm.
February is mental health and emotional health. March is going to be love life, and then we're going to have everything. We're going to have financial life, your parenting, family life. We're going to have all 13 categories.
Yeah.
So it is absolutely a broad way, and I think that's really, really important. It's really not enough people are having the opportunity to span out and have us look at across their entire life.
Mhm.
And we truly get to live an abundant life. We're managing and stressing about all these different categories. So
Certainly.
just to take a beat and be like, how am I doing? And maybe find areas that maybe you've forgotten about, or maybe you've abandoned, or maybe you're just totally avoiding. I find that a lot.
Mhm.
And then to say, okay, I'm actually going to step into this. I'm
Yeah.
going to come into great awareness of where it's at.
Mhm.
And what we like to take a big span out, like look at the whole picture and use that whole picture to find patterns, to find anomalies, so that you can find the focus areas of your life that are going to matter the most.
Yeah.
I don't think it's realistic that you focus on them all at the same time.
No.
Uh,
It's hard to it would be hard to do that because
yeah.
you'd be almost too close to the situation trying to look at all at once, and that makes it a little too abstract to really pull out the pieces that you need to. I'm sure, though, through the process, you're finding interconnections between the modalities, and at times you need to talk about 2 or 3 together.
Yeah.
But overall, if you can look at each individual one, then you can find the patterns that are similar across them all, right?
Yep, that's exactly it.
Well, awesome. Tell me a little bit more about this life inventory assessment. So obviously it's a part of your life fulfillment project, but how would you say this life inventory assessment is incorporated into it? And what are the successes you've seen behind it?
Yeah, for sure. So this is like my baby. When I left the corporate world 7 years ago, I didn't know exactly what I was gonna do. I didn't know. I knew I had a bigger game to play. I knew it was gonna be in leadership and transformation in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that I would end up becoming a master hypnotherapist. That wasn't on the, and I didn't know that so much of my work would end up being in helping people kind of see the personal side of their leadership in their business life.
Mm-hmm.
I was a business, like I'd done everything in business. What I realized in doing leadership coaching and running programs is, as I was working with individuals, for me to be my best with them, I wanted to see their whole picture. And I'd been doing that in my own life for years, for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this kind of sketched out framework for how to really, really quickly get to know someone and find out where their greatest areas for energy gain would be.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times that's finding out where their pain spots were. And also helping them see it all and prioritize what was most important.
Mm-hmm.
I had a system for that. And it was part of my natural approach that when I started with somebody new, I would use that system, and we were able to get far really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Because we were starting with the big picture and then focusing in on the unique elements that mattered most to them, and then apply strategies, tactics that would benefit them as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were able to show up with more energy at work, to have more creativity in their overall being, to be actually just more present and alive in their life.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a long story of, like about a year into doing the work, I realized this thing that I've built is actually a thing. Like, I didn't know I was building a thing all these years when I was doing my own personal reflection. And then when I was using it, I realized this is something that I need to build.
Mm-hmm.
So we went.
It's not even just a singular tool; it's multiple tools in one.
Well, yeah, like it is a self-assessment, and it produces a life map.
Mm-hmm.
And so it takes a person about 15, 20 minutes, and I do it with individuals and groups. I've done it with 400 people at a time.
Yeah.
And it allows a person to get a strong overview and to take and like to evaluate each segment of their life just one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
How am I feeling about this? And we measure that against 5 well-being measures.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got a behavioral science base to it, where it's like, what are the things that are most correlated to a person's fulfillment?
Mm-hmm.
We measure all 5 of them.
Yeah.
And then when I can look at that across all the categories for a person, it's like, this might sound corny, but I actually teach this to coaches too. It's one of my segments where I teach them how to use this.
Yeah.
You've seen the movie like A Beautiful Mind, maybe, or Limitless.
Mm-hmm.
And all the numbers come falling from, and it's like things make sense. That's what it's like when a coach, or like when I see someone's life map, I intimately know them. I'll have never met them, and I'm like, oh, look at that pattern. Oh, look at that pain point. Oh, look at the opportunity there. And I get excited because now I can sit with that person. I create a really safe space and say, okay, well, let's look at what we see, get validation from them. It's a sense-making tool, not a perfect science.
Yeah.
And the speed that you can go to accelerate a person's gain in life is huge. Some, like a lot of times people will break down and cry just because they're just like, wow, like you see me and you see my pain points. A lot of times people get really, really excited because we're right at the pinnacle thing that's been too overwhelming for them to figure out. Because exactly like you said, our brains can't handle it.
Yes.
13 categories, already our brains can only handle 4 to 7 things at a time. In those 13 categories, you've got relationships and goals and past things that maybe aren't healed, and your brain just goes into overwhelm and you can't possibly sort it out.
Yeah. But you talked about how you help them prioritize.
Yes.
So in the end, that's you're being their guide to what they need to focus on, which I'm sure you I don't know which way you do it, but either you're creating that prioritization for them or they're doing it, or you're doing it in a collaborative effort. So you're helping them prioritize, you're being that guide, but you're also kind of being an accountability partner, where you're making sure they're going after piece by piece as they're working with you through time.
Mm-hmm. The very first, so you got it exactly. The very first question is prioritization.
Mm-hmm.
And people love it and hate it because there's 13 categories of their life and I have them stack rank it. Mm-hmm. Online, it's just a drag and drop, and it's like, oh, well, what is more important to me? And I preface it with, hey, choose what's most important to you right now. Don't worry about if it's the exact right answer. We'll sort it out. Mm-hmm. But just like you get to make that choice with nobody else influencing it.
Yeah.
There's no judgment. You choose what's most important. And just that first question is liberating. What do I care about more? Do I care about my career right now or my love life? Oh, I have to choose between my love life and my family? How do I possibly do that? And it's like, it's fine. Just go with it. And that gives us
prioritizing, say, your career over your love life in this scenario. It might be this big of a difference. It might be a minuscule difference between that priority. And it could be because you're about to get a promotion in your career. So that's really important. And so you're doing all this extra work at the moment. Doesn't mean it doesn't change down the road. And like you said, it doesn't have to be right.
Yeah, exactly. And that just opens up the first reflection window. What is most important to me and how do I make those decisions? Fantastic. We're already winning. And actually the list doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. You're asking yourself, what is most important to me and how do I make those decisions? Mm-hmm. So that's how it begins. And I do have a little soapbox quip about accountability. I have a reframe of accountability. Mm-hmm. When I'm coaching with people and training coaches, because those are my two major realms, is I flip the word accountability to holding people capable.
I like that.
No one wants to be held accountable because it's like got a kind of a hierarchical like vibe to it. Mm-hmm. But if I have and this is, I'll go specifically with coaches, like empathic, caring coaches. I just did a worksheet around this. Sometimes get soft. They'll have an amazing session, mm-hmm. and sometimes they'll get soft around the goals at the end. Because it's not their role to hold the person accountable. Yeah. If it's like a life coach and I'm like, well, wait a second. What if you got really actually like firm and fierce, mm-hmm. around really anchoring the beautiful work you just did into what are they going to try next in their life, mm-hmm. that you can hold them capable for trying?
Yes.
And I think that's actually a beautiful gift we can do for people, because sometimes we lose our own sight of how capable we are.
Yes.
And it's really easy to get distracted and all those things. And if you've got somebody in your court that from a place of love and support is saying, hey, I believe that you can do this and I'm going to hold you capable to it. And if it doesn't work out, it's actually not about the goal. It's about what did you learn in the process?
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to put it. When in my workplace, we pair accountability with empowerment and initiative. And so it has a positive tone to it. We talk about accountability and responsibility equals ownership, in a way. And so it's holding people capable. We know you're You can do it. We know you're capable, as you say. So do it. You can do it. So why not do it? And we just use the term accountability buddy with our management team and our mentor team, where we're saying you're the accountability buddy. But the team member doesn't necessarily see them as an accountability buddy. They see it as fine-tuned mentorship throughout time.
Yeah.
So we actually have 2 mentors currently working with one of our supervisors, funny enough. So we have a manager and an outside mentor, both working with the same supervisor at the moment, because we're holding him capable.
Mm-hmm.
He is able to do the work, and he usually makes great decisions. Sometimes he has deficits, but that doesn't mean he's doing something wrong. It just might mean he could do something better. And so I think that's a great way to put it, is you do need to get hard when it comes to the goals. You do need to, give them that excitement and show them that this is the big thing. Yeah, yes, we took the assessment. Yes, we prioritized, your life fulfillment, but these are your goals within this, and this is what you need to do to get there. And you can, in fact, do it. So instead of making it accountability, which can have that negative tone, and holding them to it, and having more of that direct tone, you can make that direct tone positive. You certainly can. And I think that is what people need. Is it's a good push. As I say, it's eustress. There's eustress and there's distress. Eustress is good stress. Distress is bad stress. Well, almost everyone that goes through eustress, you think of physical activity. It's really good for your body, and you do it. But there's also eustress for your mind and your mental health, and it's being able to overcome challenges. It's going to sound dumb to compare it to this, maybe not, but it's the idea of when you put someone with a phobia in presence with that phobia, it makes them overcome it. It's actually eustress in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's a great way to frame it. I really, really love that.
Mm-hmm. I just think it's so important, and you clearly are doing great work. You're working with both coaches, so you can pass off this methodology to others to coach more people. So there's a greater set of individuals, but you're also coaching people individually, so you're not losing that connection. When it comes to those clients, who would you say that you typically attract on a personal client basis versus a coach client basis? What types of groups of individuals would you say you attract?
Yeah, for sure. So on the personal side, I'm either working within an organization that really has a belief in the whole person approach. I really celebrate the organizations that I get to work with, because they're making an investment in their people, and they're putting I'm really clear with the organizations I work with that it's like the boss is the person I'm working with. Like there's a confidentiality that I absolutely hold, and I'll be like, if it's the best thing for that person, I will help them find either a new role or a different organization if they're not bringing themselves to your organization in the way that they need to. And that will be a gift to your organization. Trust me, it will. Most of the time that doesn't happen, because the organizations I'm working with, they're investing in their people, and they're saying, here's a leadership coach. We believe in you. We don't need to know everything that's happening in your life, but you can tell him, and he's going to help you be your best self and bring that best self to work.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I was going to say, it's great because I think that's a good approach for organizations to take, because not employees don't necessarily want to tell organizations their nitty gritty.
No.
Especially the employer or the owners, something like that, especially in a smaller organization. They might tell some of their coworkers, but even then they might hold it in. And so it's good that they can work through things with somebody that the organization trusts to help them work through it, which I will say there's a show called Billions, and there's an IO psychology professional in it who coaches stockbrokers. Simply put, coaches stockbrokers, and talks about whatever's going on in their life and motivates them, and it's all confidential. It's almost like having counseling within the workplace. And so that show, honestly, is what made me fall in love with IO psychology, I will admit. But working with an organization and having that rapport and that trust with them so that their team members can then go to this individual and gain the help they need on a personal and professional space is just the next level, I guess I would say. We talk about professionalism in our workplace as being prepared at work means being prepared for work, which means being healthy outside of work. And so we always are talking about that. And one of our challenges at the end of this training is go do something new and different that's challenging for you. Read a nonfiction book, start a new workout regimen, start a true healthy diet, even if that's going for a walk 30 minutes a day, or yes, reading a nonfiction book, or starting to journal, or something else. Whatever you want to do, start something new and different and go after it. And then 2 weeks later, we check in and say, hey, how's your challenge going? If you'd like to share it, we'd love to hear it. And then at the end of the month, we say, how did your challenge go? Do you think it was successful? And those touch points, again, make that difference. But not everyone's going to want to share with the organization what's going on. So that outside person, in the end, usually is the most advantageous way to go.
I've been on both sides, like internal programs that have like really tried to build that, and obviously now I'm on the external. And I don't say I'm an external just because that's the side I'm on now. I truly don't. Like, I've thought deeply about this issue, and if you think about being an employee and what it takes to be truly vulnerable when you're in an organization that's like, well, that's your job, and it's really, really hard and I haven't really seen an organization do it well, because it's really, really hard to ask that person to just, well, no, like just pretend that they don't control your career or your salary or your performance review, or that they have no say in it. Even if the organization has done a good job to say, this is this department. It's really hard to break down the barriers of that psychological safety and that trust.
Yeah. I would say there are certainly challenges with environments that aren't, more adaptable, more open-minded. And you see that in certain corporations. But that's why it's also important to have a level of values and, a shared mission or vision between the team members and the company itself. Because even if the company needs to, alter its goals in a slight sense, like, the way in which they reach these goals, then as long as the person has alignment with, the foundations of the company, then that person's going to easily be able to adapt to what the company needs, meet them in the middle. Employers are trying to meet their employees in the middle. Employees also should try to meet the employer in the middle. The biggest challenge, though, is when there isn't alignment and there isn't an open-mindedness or adaptability within the company. Yes, there needs to be still a stability to the company. It can't be too adaptable. I call it flexi-stable. I know I've said this a billion times throughout our podcast. I've talked about the word flexi-stable. So it's got to be flexi-stable. It's got to be flexible but stable at the same time.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Would you say there are any major challenges you've had with organizations who may have not had the culture developed for, a more open-minded and or accountability, pushing people that they are capable? Have you ever had challenges where an organization wasn't built in that way, but you were working with that organization and their people?
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that comes up is particularly for like an organization that's been around for a while, sometimes the very top echelon of leadership, they're making the decisions and they're investing in this leadership culture. But then there's like coaching for them, or this line, but not for me.
Yeah.
Like, and when there's, in particular, when I'm coaching like the individuals that many of them are reporting up, I'm like, I recognize a disconnect. And when there's not kind of a hey, let's start from the top
Mhm.
and make sure that we're always kind of that we're working on the same level of things together.
Mhm.
When that isn't there, it can create some challenges. I've gotten to be creative on how I'll work, around that, but it can create some challenges because you'll
Mhm.
have kind of one layer that you're working on, and then sometimes I'll be teaching a level of skill set that they go to try, and it's actually not. It's
There's a
it,
disconnect.
there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not as effective. But if they see their leaders are also getting coaching, and that coaching is in the same realm of, of emotional development and vulnerability, and then that's the ideal path.
Mhm.
Um,
And I will say, any organization that's clearly investing into this type of coaching, they have the ability to change and adapt. I know with high level leaders, oftentimes it's a time constraint saying that they don't want coaching more so than anything. But they're trying to focus on keeping the company afloat and or trying to get it to that next level. So usually they're kind of busy in the financial sphere. But a 5-minute conversation, a 10-minute conversation can still be helpful. Even just showing levels of vulnerability without going all in, that also can help. So while it would be the perfect scenario is all levels are going through the same type, having brief conversations, and maybe you have touch bases with those leaders that maybe aren't doing the coaching themselves, that must be helpful.
yeah, for sure. And that's like there's adaptive strategies to work with that. And I'm I, I'm a hopeless idealist. So it's like, hey, if you want your people to be all in, then let's be all in. And if you can't prioritize time for yourself, then that's actually also sending a message.
Mhm.
So I have that preference, and then I adapt, improvise, and overcome where it fits. That's yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I really appreciated having you on. Obviously, I'm going to let you finish up with anything else you want to talk about. But before we do that, I want to ask you to let's talk about a company that isn't open-minded, doesn't have the culture, and hasn't thought of this. How would you pitch the importance of what you do to them, so that we can maybe grasp their attention and help them realize that there needs to be a connection between the personal and the professional?
Yeah, well, I might ask questions like, "Hey, do your people trust each other? Do you feel you have a culture where people are actually being themselves and are open and honest?"
Hmm.
I might poke at some of the current challenges that they're having within the culture,
Hmm.
and then I might ask about like even their personal experiences
Hmm.
about um, about when have they been their best at work in any role,
Hmm.
and then I like to I'll say step into it, right? So it's like a toe in the water would be a workshop
Hmm.
as an example, where it's like, hey, you don't want to go all in. Like, what about a leadership development workshop where, can we get 2 hours? Can we do half a day where we do a functional team group work? And I want to get an early experience of, okay, what is possible in a short amount of time.
Hmm.
When I use the tools that I have, that usually can be like, oh, wow, like look at the conversations they're having. I would have never thought that they would have had that level of trust or conversation.
Hmm.
So that would be roughly speaking. It's like, what are the problems? How long have they been? And are you willing to try something different?
Yeah.
And then what level are you willing to try?
Hmm.
And then based on kind of the level of commitment, we would move from there.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. And that's a little tidbit for our listeners. Really keeping Maurice in mind if there is anything within those questions that you believe applies to either your organization or the organizations you work with, since we have a good amount of IOs that listen here in. Think on those questions. Is there something that Maurice might be able to help you with? So thank you again, Maurice. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on that we might have missed that you feel is important to talk about?
The other side, so you mentioned, I work with kind of two sides. So one is corporate leadership individual, and then the other side is coaches.
Yes.
So for the coach and or therapist that is working with a whole person approach, they're working on performance management, they're working on lifestyle and balance, they're working on emotional regulation.
Mm-hmm.
If they are looking at working with clients and they either have a program or one-on-one programs or services, this tool that we've birthed in the world, it's like a coach's super tool. So my invitation to them, my big invitation is check it out, take it for yourself. And most coaches, when they get that far and they take it, they're like, oh, if I had this much information with my clients from the very beginning, they see it. Like immediately they see that how much it could affect the results that they can create with their clients. So if you're a coach out there listening to this, then please, I really invite you to take the assessment, have a conversation with me, and see if learning this methodology and using this assessment would be helpful in your practice.
Yeah, that's great, Maurice. Yeah, we definitely have coaches that talk with us too, and that listen in. We've talked about a variety of different methods. In the end, a lot of them are all based towards self-fulfillment. But I will say yours is the first one I've seen a true assessment that goes alongside it. And because you have so many different constructs that you're measuring through that assessment, it's really multiple tools in one. I do like to emphasize that because you've done that much extra work, I would say.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you seeing it.
Yes, of course. Well, it was so great having you on, Maurice. Obviously, we're going to post you out there. We're going to be tagging you. So our listeners, you will be able to reach out to him if you are interested in having that conversation.
Yeah, you bet. And I really encourage you to sign up for the Fulfillment Project. You're going to get a ton of amazing tools, completely free, and some incredible interviews over the next year. So I'd love to have you part of the community.
Yes, I definitely will be. So hopefully our listeners will be too.
Okay, awesome.
Well, with that, this concludes another intriguing episode of Organizational Sherlocks. I'm Morgan Ashworth, reminding you that the journey to success is an ongoing investigation. Stay curious, stay strategic, and keep utilizing insights to decode your business mysteries. Join us every Tuesday for your next Whodunit. This is Organizational Sherlocks, closing today's case.